Who's ready for a great show today? We're taking an October stroll down the Walk of Fame, a podcast where Hillary and I take a deep dive with actors and filmmakers about the craft of cinema. We walk the walk, but can we talk the talk? Either way, you win. Hello, Hillary.
Hello, Bryan. I think we are on the right path with our guest on this edition of Walk of Fame, the esteemed actor Eric Lange. Eric has a resume, Bryan, I think is longer than all of our limbs put together.
I totally agree, and so happy to have him on the show.
Woo, woo, give it up for Eric. I'm good, guys. I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
So good to have you here. We're going to have a lot of fun talking about movies, television, and all about you. But let's start. Growing up in Hamilton, Ohio, Butler County, no less, which is
Yeah.
also the birthplace of Charles Richter. Yes, the Richter scale guy. What was the not so secret ingredient in your bowl of small town stew that first tipped the scale toward creative fulfillment and eventually led you to the stage?
My God, did ChatGPT write that? That's a beautifully worded
No,
question.
that's all me. I did all of my research over the last 24 hours and I just try to come up with fun ways to say ridiculous things.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. So what about the Midwest sort of cultivated the whole thing? Is that
Yes.
I don't know, like it really didn't start that way. I guess like many people in the Midwest, I just loved movies. I loved going to the movie theaters and just getting lost. I always called it my church, to go into a movie theater and just sit back in the dark and experience this story, told by filmmakers and actors and writers. And but it just, in Ohio, you just don't assume that's a career, that you could achieve. But I guess it was a little bit of an entertaining bug because I wasn't a good sports person. I'll say that. So that leaves you the arts really in school. You're either in band and the arts or you're in all the sports. And I wasn't a great athlete, I would say. So I ended up getting in like a choir, and then I joined a show choir and, sequin vests, bow ties, the whole things, jazz hands. And we would go and we would compete at competitions. We would perform at rest homes. Someone got wheeled away on a gurney in the middle of one of our performances. I watched a colostomy bag fill in real time as I was dancing in front of this lady. And so it was like a soft entrance to just being in front of people and performing. And I really liked it. And then my freshman year in high school, there was no show choir. This was all middle school. And my buddy came by my locker and he was like, I'm going to this drama club meeting, if you want to come. And I did. And I walked in there and it was like, you know, just this group of very eclectic people, very Midwesterny eclectic, but supremely confident. And I don't know, I felt like an awkward kid a lot. And so I was curious how these people had mastered these two things to be so quirky and so cool at the same time. And so I started sort of working with them and I got cast in a this musical. And I just, the whole process of cultivating this musical, and then the curtain came down and everyone clapped and the curtain came up and I looked around at like everyone standing with me and I was like, how crazy that we all just got together and made this thing and took these people on this ride. And like being in Ohio sitting in a seat watching the movie, I'm now the thing that people are watching, and they're moved by the story I told. And I just heard this voice in my head, no lie, it said, I'm home. Like that was it. And it never stopped. That was the beginning of it. I did theater all through high school and then college at Miami University of Ohio. I got my BFA. And then I moved to LA 6 months after I graduated from college. It was just like, boom, I just knew it. And but what I will say about the Midwest is there's just there's chunks of it that I have a hard time with. Uh, maybe politically, but it's really good-hearted people who are down to earth, who are just comfortable in their own skin, and who are not defined by their career necessarily, and who, it's just I always like going back to Ohio. And so when I came from Ohio to Los Angeles, I felt like I brought some of that Midwestern, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, in a world of people maybe trying to be or appear different than they were. I just never walked that walk. And I was always glad I grew up in the Midwest. We said like Cincinnati was a great place to grow up, and at a certain point, maybe a great place to leave, But I'm really glad that I'm from there. I still consider myself a Midwesterner. You know what I mean? LA is a great place to live, but I will always sort of consider Ohio my home. So
That's great. And as somebody who's been to C-Bus countless times, love Ohio.
yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. That's a rather long answer, but
That's a great
yeah,
answer.
a lot of things went into sort of uh, help formulate that to here.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, as an Angelino, I'm no stranger to the Midwest either because my grandparents lived in Columbus, Ohio.
Mm.
So I have a little bit of that in my bloodstream too. And I will say Midwestern people have really great values.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Very,
That's
very
it.
great values.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you and I get along, Eric.
I think so. You're an honorary Ohioan.
Yes, absolutely. But getting back to your career, every
Yeah.
actor has some sort of fascinating story of when they first broke through and thought, you know what, I can make a career out of this. When and how did that realization come for you?
Oh God. I remember when I first moved here, I was 21, just out of college, and I was already kind of balding, but I weighed like 140 pounds, and I'm 185 pounds now. So if you can imagine how awkward I might have looked, but I got a commercial agent pretty quickly, and I was doing commercials because I was like an idealistic young dad. I was balding, so I had a little age in me, but no lines anywhere on my face. I had a 16-year-old son in a commercial when I was 23. So yeah, I
Love
told the
it.
kid, I'm like, don't you dare tell anyone my age. But so it was about 8 years of doing commercials in theater. I just could not get anyone interested in me doing TV and film. And then I was, my manager came to a play. He picked me up. We're still together 23 years later.
Wow.
And and in about 6 months after meeting with him, I had a guest star on The West Wing, right? That was my first kind of big thing. And something about being under his leadership and the partnership I had with him led me to go, I have someone who's taking care of me now. But still, you do guest star after guest star after guest star after guest star, and if nobody watches the show, it really doesn't change the needle other than adding some interest to your resume. And I think the first time that happened, in a real way, was Lost. Obviously, like that show is just a phenomenal show. But I remember we were wrapping the finale, and Carlton Cuse and Damon Lindelof were on set, and they had this little talk with me, and they said, when you go back, I think you're going to find your life is a little different now. And I was like, no, 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 no. I do these all the time, and nobody knows who I am. And I got back to LA and had lunch, and there must have been 3 or 4 people just over the course of lunch that walked up to the table to get a picture to whatever, because I was kind of recognizable. I had this long hair, I was bald on top, and I had these vintage glasses. I called it a skullet. But good or bad, not many people looked like that. And so anyway, and so many people watched that show. So that show was a turning point, and I guess the sort of the credibility of my career as an actor, and it did. It lasted a very long time. That sort of, when you go into audition and finally they're saying, "Oh my gosh, thank you for coming in," and then immediately, "What was it like to be on Lost?" So yeah, so that was kind of like, okay, so there is a graph, and the graph can go up. It doesn't have to just plateau until you die, or God forbid, go down. So yeah, that was probably the first time I went, okay, I got a shot at like getting somewhere with this.
That's That's great. And just I remember watching Lost and everything about it, people being plugged in like they were into the Matrix, thinking
Oh yeah.
all of it was nuts.
Yeah, there was just a great documentary done on it too that I participated in. And we talked about the fact that it was before Twitter, it was before
Yeah,
social
Yeah.
media and even really DVRs. So people would meet at each other's houses to
I did
watch it.
that.
Yeah, as it aired. It was really, but I think all of this stuff is so like it's just this wildly fortuitous, crazy, unplanned journey, that you could never calculate as an actor. Like I had grown my hair out for this 6 episode pilot we did on Catalina Island. It was me and John Schneider. And I don't know who's seen it. It was called 26 Miles. It was this crazy, it was 26 miles from LA to Catalina. And I had
Hmm.
grown my hair out for that. But right after that, the audition for Lost came, and I put my little funky glasses on and that wild hair I had, and it was like Mad Scientist and that guy, just completely met. But had I not done that crazy 6 episode pilot on Catalina, I don't know if I would have gotten lost.
Yeah.
And who knows, I don't know. I like to think it's many different tributaries of a river that all sort of still come back to the main river somehow or another.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't, who knows, But yeah, that was a major break for me.
No, that's really cool. And speaking of all of the tributaries of acting and cinema,
Yes.
you've been a police officer, a detective, a prince, a coach, and somehow a doctor 8 times over. Not to mention a
Oh
cast of
my,
other characters large enough to fill a city census.
yeah.
Is there a role still rattling around your imagination that makes you want to shout to the world, let me play this already?
Oh my God. Oh my God. I don't. I feel like I get asked that a lot, and I should have an answer by now. But it's because it's wrapped up in the story. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like what this person goes through as a pair, as opposed to who this person is. I did make a big campaign for a minute to play Jim Henson because I had this long hair back then, and I put this side by side picture up of me and Jim Henson, and I was like, "Come on, man, somebody, let me do this," because I think that's probably just a tremendous story. But no, I don't. I don't. I like being surprised. I like things coming along, going, "Oh my God!" And I've never done this, because you sort of lose track. I mean, that sounds arrogant. I don't mean to sound that way, but like there's things you have a long enough career, and you're like, I didn't know I'd played a doctor 8 times. That's very funny. um, you do start to feel, I guess, once you've done like too many guys in a suit in a row, and I'm like, no, 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 I need some tattoos, or I need to shave my head, or I want to play someone vulnerable because I've been the heavy too many times, But that's just sort of an inner compass. You start to get sort of like you lean one way or another. But I don't have like a guy off the top of my head. I'll think about it as we talk here, and if I come up with one, I'll shout it out.
No, of course. And I
That
just, yeah, so I just liked that you said Jim Henson. And I've been picturing it's like, did you do the Kermit the Frog voice? Did you do the Jim Henson voice? And you're like, okay, I need to do this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Kermit the Frog here. Yeah, something. I'd have to, it'd take me months and months, but
Yeah,
that'd
that's
be,
great.
yeah.
No, Eric, another amazing role that you had was as CIA operative Bill Steckner on Narcos and Narcos
Uh-huh.
Mexico. That was based on a real agent who ran guns, drugs himself. He headed the CIA bureau in Colombia.
Yeah.
What was it like immersing yourself in the espionage, the corruption, and the cartel world?
Yeah, that was wild because the show was already on season one and it was a big hit. It was Netflix's first, I think, major series. I might be
Yeah.
wrong. But I had just had my wife and I had just had our daughter, and it had been like 6 months and I hadn't worked, and this thing came in and I was like, a series in Bogota. Like, I'm a dad, dude. I can't go to Bogota and and my manager was like, no, a lot of people work there now. It's very safe. But I didn't have a lot of time. I had to wait until my daughter was asleep for a couple hours to do this. They wrote a monologue for the audition. And I remember just going, the monologue was him and the main DEA guy. And it was basically saying, the DEA guy was saying, I know what you're doing, and I know you're being sneaky, and I'm going to bust you. And I basically say to him, you can't win what you're trying to win, which was Steckner's whole thing. The war on drugs is a joke. And so I remember putting the camera to my side instead of in front of me, but to the side, like I'm sitting at a bar. And so every time I turned, it was like, but then I was gone again, like this sort of mystery to him. And when he looked at the camera, it gave it a little more. But it was just some weird idea I had because I was so overtired from having this new baby. And I'm like, I just got to get this done. And I got to lean on my best instinct. And the next morning, they called and they're like, you got it. It was like this wild symbiotic thing that happened. But then I was very nervous because Bogota is so much a character in that show. And
Yeah.
it was intimidating to me. And that the show was so real feeling and this totally foreign land to me. I was very nervous to go. But once I got there, uh that was another funny thing about that hair is I got the job and most CIA guys you see in movies look like Secret Service officers, frankly, and they're not really. And I was like, I want to argue to keep this hair because Netflix wanted me to trim it. And I said the reason why is as a CIA dude, you got to be able to walk into a bar in Bogota and sit down next to somebody and go, what do you think about this bullshit? You can't look like you got an earpiece in. And everyone ended up agreeing and we kept it. But I love that weird authenticity about keeping that weird look I had for that guy. And he was just so ballsy and the smartest person in the room. You just hate to admit that he's right over and over and over. And how he would just sort of ghost into a room and go, here's what I think about your plans, and then back out again. I absolutely loved that character. I had this deep-seated dying wish that Netflix would make a spin-off of just Steckner's escapades all over, the world and what he was doing. But yeah, that was also one of my favorite jobs, I think I'd say.
Very cool. I like that. And with all of the projects that you've worked on, everybody you've met, you recently brushed against the Force itself in meeting Jedi royalty in the form of Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill. Was
Yeah.
it a dream fulfilled? And what would the 10-year-old version of you have said about that moment?
Oh my God. I was my 10-year-old self when I met him. We were at a play. We went to see Sean Hayes play Goodnight Oscar in London, which was just a million shout outs to Sean Hayes, who is just absolutely phenomenal in that play. But we were sitting there and my sister-in-law was like, I think that's Mark Hamill, like in the row in front of us. And I looked over and I'm like, no, 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 that can't be. Why would he be here? And as we watched people come up and sort of brush and say hi to him, I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. And for me, it's always like almost an annoyance because now my entire evening is spent thinking about there's not many people that have to walk up to. But once it's someone like that, I'm like, oh man. Now the whole play, I'm trying to watch the play and think about do I approach? And if I do, what do I say? And so at the end of the play, she's like, are you going to talk to him? You going to talk to him? And I said, if he stops in the lobby and is alone, I will say something to him, but I'm not going to And so we walked out and sure enough, he's just leaning against a railing, waiting to go backstage or whatever. And I just walked up and said, I'm Mr. Hamill. I'm a huge fan, and we have a mutual friend that worked together with you, and you gave an autograph to me and my son Oliver, and it's framed in his room. And he was like, oh, okay, okay. It was like you could tell he was going, it's all right, buddy, it's all right. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm sure you get this all the time. And he was like, no, I don't actually. And he was just the loveliest guy, and we of course got a picture together, and but I walked away shaking, like physically shaking. It's so funny that I had that weirdly with Ben Folds, this musician I love. I met him and I walked away shaking. Like there's something about the impact someone has on your life, especially when you're younger or you're going through stuff, be it music or movies, that it's just it's unidentified. It's like it's this thing you just can't possibly understand. And when you have that person in front of you, it's like all these weird worlds colliding. Anyway, he was lovely, and I was really glad I said hi. And so yeah. So now I got to find Harrison Ford. That would be my other uh Star Wars icon. And everything else. God, Indiana Jones, one of my favorite movies.
All
Anyway.
I'm hearing is that you're best friends with Mark Hamill now, so that's great.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna have coffee. Yeah. No, he was lovely.
That's great.
So, Eric, I know you did a lot of traveling this summer and you were in London. You saw Sean Hayes perform in Goodnight Oscar. Did that inspire you to go back to the stage, hit the boards again as you have in the past?
Yeah, I did. It was like my first 8 years in LA. I did tons of theater, and then the TV and film stuff, paid actual money, which became necessary. So that sort of took focus. And then about 8 years after I stopped doing theater, I did a show at the Geffen Playhouse called The Country House. With Blythe Danner was my mom and this incredible cast. Donald Margulies wrote it. Dan Sullivan directed it, and that ended up going to Broadway. Um, so we did that at Manhattan Theater Club on Broadway, which was like one of the most sensational times of my life, without question. Um, I was so nervous because I'd never done a play in New York at all, and most people there have to work their way up very slowly to get a decent. And this is one of the best parts in this play. And I was just so nervous. LA audiences, I mean, New York audiences were going to read the program and go, "Oh, this television actor is staining our," And they were just so incredibly lovely to me. And so then I came back from that, and 2 weeks later, my daughter was born. That was timed that way, but I was like, this is kind of it for a while, and now I have a son. I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old. And so doing theater, it's been now 8 years since that play. So it did make me itch when I saw him. It always does when I see a good play. I'm like, oh man, I got to get back. But that means losing bedtime. It means, it's quite a lot out of your schedule. But that's one of my favorite things in life, is just rehearsing a play. I just love the rehearsal process. I love opening night and closing night. And then in the middle, you're learning to work your way through it. 8 shows a week on Broadway. It's like it is taxing. I can't imagine doing that regularly because it was a lot out of me. But no, it's one of my biggest loves. When you're doing the TV and film stuff, you make a little puzzle piece, and the next day you make another puzzle piece, and you make three more the next day, and then someone puts the puzzle together, and then you show the puzzle to people like at another house, miles from your house. And you're like, well, I hope they liked it when they saw it was finished, and you don't always get a sense of feedback.
Yeah.
You do from the critics, good or bad, right? But theater, right after the play, you walk out to the sidewalk and there's all these people gathered around to tell you what they thought about it. And you hear their reactions, and you hear sniffles, and you hear laughs. And it's like, oh, it's mother's milk, man. It's the best thing in the world.
I love hearing that. That's so good how you said that.
Oh yeah. If
And
you could do it all the time, it'd be
I
great.
right, and like it's crazy because this is going to sound intense, but after 114 productions and counting for you,
Oh
you've
God.
proven that only a few performers can shapeshift as effortlessly as you have, like Robert's Blossom did as Ezra Cobb in Deranged to the tender old man Marley in Home Alone. But what's the
Man, I love that grab. Holy mackerel. Good
Heck
one.
yeah.
Yeah.
What's the private alchemy you practice that makes each role both distinct and unforgettable?
Oh my God. I just I'm big into detail. I remember when I first started auditioning like in theater, I would the shoes were always very important. Like what kind of shoes this person wears. Because once I had the shoes, it informed the walk, and then everything sort of built up from the shoes. And then you have Dannemora as the other extreme of that, where loads of weight affected literally the way I walked, the way I, my jawline, my chin. the way you carry yourself, how tired you are walking upstairs, and that's just one component. That's just the weight, and then the false teeth were this sort of like, I called them a shame anchor. It was just like this thing right in the middle of your face that you couldn't really hide, but was always there. And then the wigs and all this stuff. I really grew to find and have faith in how much the outside allows my inside life in these parts to come alive. And so with each part, I try and find something that's sort of unique, where it's applicable, that could switch things up and give me more of sort of a, not a crutch, but a foundation on which to stand, so the inside of this guy can come alive. But it can backfire on you in that sometimes you just are sort of a version of yourself. There's not much makeup or prosthetics or fake teeth or anything like that. And I share this story that I heard about Gary Oldman, because Gary is like that as well. Obviously, he's like a complete and utter chameleon, one of my heroes, and certainly someone like I would say my career leads to follow. And that he was asked, he was doing this part, and then the director was like, we don't need all that. We just want you. And that it made him uncomfortable in a way, because that sort of shield or that armor that we have that says, I'm this guy, it was taken from him. And it's just about belief and intention and presence to put the thing together. So you can't lean on them too much, but I just like detail, the smallest little thing. You know, yeah, I
Because
just
that's what makes it. It's the little details.
it is. And, even on sets when I'm playing somebody, it's the end of a day in a detective office or whatever, and wardrobe comes over to tuck my shirt in. I'm always like, no, 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 no. This is that by the end of a day, your shirt's wrinkled, your cuffs are rolled up, maybe, your tie is loosened. It's history of a life lived in physical form. And so that stuff turns me on. Yeah.
Love that. Love that.
Well, Eric, you were acclaimed for your role as Lyle Mitchell in Escape at Dannemora, which you mentioned. You were nominated as Best Supporting Actor at the Critics' Choice Awards,
Uh,
and that series now has new life after originally being on Showtime. But tell us about portraying being married to Patricia Arquette's character, who was responsible for breaking the two inmates out of prison, based on that real life story, which was so riveting. I followed it very closely when it was going on.
I did too. I did too. I mean, my daughter is in volleyball right now. We were just watching the U.S. Open as well, and we told the same story a couple different times to her, in that you always want to play with people better than you. It ups your game. And Patricia, and I mean that entire cast, Benicio and Paul, and though I didn't have much to do with Paul or Benicio, but Patricia is just at the top of her game. And when you sit across someone of that caliber, it's almost like less acting is required, because she just starts the scene, and it's so real to begin with. It just drops you into this very naturally believable foundation that's the way you hit your ball back. And she's just so alive, and that gives you so much to react to. I mean, yeah, the more you can, I feel like when you pick these projects, if you're lucky to be able to get a job and have a say about something, is I like to work with the best writers I can find, the best directors, the best actors, because they all just make you look better. And working with her, and how generous she was, just endlessly generous with the way we worked together, was just that whole thing was just a dream come true. And the beautiful end to it, with that the nomination from, yeah, the Critics' Choice Awards, your organization. I just yeah, it's just such a beautiful memory, the whole thing.
It's incredible. Go CCA. There you
Yeah,
go.
and Patricia got an
Exactly.
Emmy, I believe.
Architecture fascinates you, it seems like, almost as much as performance. How does that passion for blueprints and arches seep into your creative world? And do you see acting itself as kind of the Union Terminal in Cincinnati that is grand, intricate, and designed to hold multitudes?
Oh my God. Um, Architecture, you're referring to Union Terminal in Cincinnati.
Yep.
Yes, I do. I do have an affinity for architecture. Can you help me get to the connection to the acting about that?
Well, how the architecture and what goes into that creative moment of building something from scratch when you get a role and it comes from a foundation, a base, and then you grow that and you build it into this character you play.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I think I have this phrase I've used for a long time, which I'm struggling to remember the second, which is oh my God. Oh my God, I can't remember the phrase. Hang on, hang on.
I caught him off
Oh,
guard with that question of
I,
Cincinnati.
I
It was
got it.
Yeah, that's a complicated question.
No, it's a great question. Rigidly flexible.
oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Because I do like to have a plan in terms of building a character. Sometimes the best thing to do is to stay open as long as possible, to have no blueprint, to read it and read it and read it and let the divine intervention that drops down into the soul and into the mind of an actor when you're making these things. Who knows where some of these ideas come from, right? To wear glasses, to wear shoes, to wear whatever. The voice, it's all just sort of that's the magic of it to me, is it sort of sometimes just shows up. And it is not planned, which is the opposite of an architecture. But I guess once I feel that that is it, then it is about locking that in and seeing how that will affect the rest of the story or the script. Um, and other times, um, I do have kind of an instant download of what it should be. I mean, Victorious is a weird example of that. I read that script, and his first lesson in class, his big lecture to the kids, I just automatically heard this voice, which was this guy who I think always wanted to be an actor, but never was, but wanted to present as what he thought an actor would look and sound like. So the voice was very much this, it was like a mix of like Robin Williams improvisation with like Peter O'Toole or something very proper, and that was the first thing I heard in my head, and it never changed. And but the problem is rigidly flexible means sometimes you plan all of this, you have blueprints, and then you get to the site and there's trees in the middle of the plot of land, right? And it's a desk that you didn't expect, or it's almost 100% of the time I get to a set, which you normally don't get to see before you work, and something is different than how I sort of envisioned it. And so you have to be willing then to drop those plans and adjust very quickly, and yet keep the heart of what it is that excited you about it. I don't ever want to sort of just do what someone tells me to do. I want it to be born from me. So it is kind of, I don't know about the actual career of architecture, but I'm sure it's a plan and then a revamping of a plan and a revamping of a plan. But the artist's original inspiration for a building could very much be similar to what I do, which is like he just sees this thing, right? It's all art to me, and this image or a voice or comes to you, and you build from that. But there's always refining, as it goes the entire time, and even once you know where you are, take to take. It's little refinements. Those windows are too big. Let's make them small. It's going to heat up this plant in the corner and kill the offices are too hot. We need tint on the windows, whatever. It's fun. I've never actually compared the two, but it is kind of similar.
It is. It's like the blueprints or a script. It's just words and numbers on a paper, and then it's you that builds upon that. So it's just
Yeah.
kind of hand in
How
hand.
does someone, yeah, how do they want someone to feel when they walk in the building? Right?
Right.
An emotional reaction to a physical structure.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an amazing question.
Oh, well, thank you. And you eloquently answered.
I tried. I tried.
You alluded to this, but many people fondly remember you as the acting teacher, Erwin Sikowitz, in the Nickelodeon series Victorious. And I want to point out Ariana Grande was one of your students. Her success must bring a smile to your face. What are some of your memories of working on that show?
Oh my God. Oh my God. The funny thing was I was doing Lost when that audition came in. So we have Lost on one side and a Nickelodeon show on the other. And I had never had, a ton of interest in doing a kids show necessarily or a teeny bopper show. But I read that script and that the character was just really strong. It just seemed like it would be fun. And and I hadn't done a ton of multicam either. And so that was kind of exciting to try. It felt more like doing a play. A lot of them have an audience you tape in front of, but the set is on this side and all the cameras are on the other, just like in theater. And and when I heard that voice in my head, I'm like, I think I can have fun with this. And so when I got there, I think I remember like my first day, I guess they all knew I had been cast. And I guess some of them had seen things I had done or whatever. And so they were all in a circle on the floor, and there was one folding chair for me to sit in. And I walked in, and they were all just sitting there like students already. And I sat down, and they were like, "What? Tell us about this and tell us about that." They were, God, 16 years old or something. And so I was just kind of quickly Uncle Eric, and I would, you know, Avin always had these, Avin Jogia had all these thoughts about movies he wanted to make. So we'd talk about that, or, even like, boyfriends or girlfriends issues. We were like a little family. I watched them grow up, and now, my God, they're all so successful and their own right. And yeah, I have tremendous pride, even though I have nothing to claim for their success, other than having gotten to see them as younger artists. And now, man, they're all off to the races. It's incredible.
Very cool. Love that. Um, so from the pounding rock beats of Salvage Yard to the softer tempos of Crazy Town, how does music, sometimes rough and sometimes tender, keep your creative compass pointed forward? And who were the artists that lit the beacons for you when you were first finding your sound?
Oh man. Well, I guess there's two questions to that. One is I write music, and I have for a very long time. I started playing piano when I was 10. And over the years I've developed a little studio in my house, and I haven't been able to do as much of it lately. But in terms of my writing style as a musician, I'm tremendously influenced by people like Ben Folds, who's
Yes.
probably my musical hero. Just the literary genius of that guy, the poetry he writes, and then a lot of the thing, when I was learning to play, I had a really good ear, and I could pick something out by ear. And my music teacher gave me a piece of music, and I would try to learn it, but he would play it for me at the end of the lesson, and then I would go home and I would just figure it out by ear. And I'd come back and he'd go, "That's great. What note is that?" And I would say, G. And he's like, "You're not reading. You're doing it by ear, and you have to either shut your ear off or quit." Basically, it was his kind of advice, because my ear was preventing me from reading. So I did quit, and I bought a chord chart, and I started learning all the chords. And then I started learning other people's music, like David Foster's instrumental soundtracks. Early on, he did St. Elmo's Fire and all these different movies. And then I fell in love with Ben Folds, and I would learn his songs. And by learning other people's music, you become a writer. You become a better writer. And I'm so sorry. Forgive me. And so that was kind of the foundation of me learning to play and write. And but in terms of as an actor, music is also tremendously influential to me. There's absolutely days when I have earbuds in and something going on a phone right until we get up to rolling, because it puts you in a state. There's all these studies on the amount of dopamine and serotonin that's released just by listening to music, and it can affect you, make you in a better mood, or make you sad, or whatever, or just some heavy metal gives you some energy or whatever. So yeah, that I really used. I've had a couple directors who allow you to play music on set, and the whole room gets that vibe. It's like fog that just sort of rolls through and affects everybody in the room. I think music is one of the most powerful things we can use as actors. I recently have started writing my own feature, and the music is going nonstop. It just talk about downloading images and information. You hear a song and you just start to see something happening. At least I do. That's why I love film score music so much, because it just naturally puts things in your head. My kids love it. My son is a big fan now of Star Wars and Indiana Jones and all that stuff, and by a byproduct is now a fan of John Williams. And he'll just sit and watch John Williams on YouTube, play with an orchestra. But whenever we listen to that stuff, I always ask them, I'm like, what are you seeing in your head? What's happening? Is it a man? Is it a woman? What are they doing? Where are they going? And they'll tell me like these stories that are just born out of sound. And so just like we've talked about with shoes or with hair or with teeth, or our scripts, I think too, another birthplace of all this creativity is just your ears and listening for more clues to build this world that you're a part of.
Oh, I love that. And for a second there, when you went away, I was like, did he get an epiphany and he's going to play something for us on the guitar? I
Oh
was
no,
like,
I'm
oh.
sorry, my phone rang.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you got the bug.
Yeah, yeah.
You just got back from New York shooting an episode of Law and Order, now going into its 25th season. Unbelievable. So, talk about being part of that storied franchise and the Dick Wolf universe.
Oh my God. Yeah, I had never done Law and Order. And it's such a quintessential New York show, and there's so many amazing actors in New York. It's one of those shows you just go, well, why would I do that? They're chocked full of actors in New York. But years, I guess it was like my first Law and Order was Law and Order SVU, which was, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago. And I was sitting at a restaurant and I told the bartender what I was doing there. And I said, but it's really weird to me that they flew me here to do this because there's so many actors in New York. And he goes, we've all done it. That was his answer. And I guess to some extent that's true. But no, this was a really great, beautiful sort of offer out of the blue to play a defense attorney. And the script is really good. And the other actors on that show, I just fell in love with, just all complete professionals. The set is such a well-oiled machine because they're, like you said, in 20 however many years. And it was such an amazing experience. And again, like no prosthetics, no wigs, just like really using the words. And it was kind of meta because, attorneys are moving around that courtroom with a specific intent. You'll ask a question and then stand closer to the jury so that the guy on the stand is looking more toward the jury. Other times you'll walk away from someone you're questioning to sort of take away their power. So I am acting as a lawyer, but the lawyer is also making meta moves, which are about influencing the jury's experience of this testimony. So that was a little bit of an education too. But there's just something fun about question and answer and the drama of that and opening and closing statements. And really, lawyers are, very close to actors in so many ways. There's an audience, they're telling a story, and their objective is to get you to believe their version of the story. And so I had a great time. What a monster machine the whole Dick Wolf world is. But it was really fun to be a part of it for the first time or for the second time, I guess. Yeah, it's a great group of people over there.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to seeing that episode.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah, that I love that. Lawyers do tell stories to the jury. That's so you put that perfectly. I get
yeah.
that.
It's funny. We all talked about. I did years ago. I did You Don't Know Jack, which was this
The game.
HBO movie about Jack Kevorkian.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
with Pacino, and I was the prosecuting attorney in that, and sent him to prison. And they sent me all the original trial footage, and
Oh,
and it's just so funny how undramatic the real courtroom worlds are, and they're shuffling papers, and on television it is a heightened version of that. But so you try and mix a little of both in, the reality of it, and then you turn up the volume a little bit.
Yeah, I hear you. That's
So,
good. So we've talked about it. Your creative life spills across multiple disciplines like acting, music, theater, and delightfully illustration. Do you secretly moonlight as like a comic book or art book devotee? And where does that love come from? And more importantly, do you still have deep cut illustrations tucked away somewhere, say Jack Nicholson as Wolf waiting to leap out of the drawers?
yeah, man. When I, again, it was just so clear when I was a kid. I wasn't a sporty kid, but I was in choir, I was in theater, and the other thing I did was draw. It was just every talent I had was all based in the arts. And my grandfather, Ken Lang, was a really great artist. And when I was very young, he would help teach me how to draw the cartoons that I loved, as Wile E. Coyote or Garfield or whatever. And I just stuck with it. And I was in like an art, animal drawing class when I was a kid. And I drew this tiger that got entered into this adult art show, and I came in third place at this thing with all these other adults. And I was like, then maybe there's something to this. So I've always done it. There was a long period where I got more serious and was doing like the Jack Nicholson portrait, which is like, I think I posted it on Instagram at some point or another because he's such a huge influence. But then it sort of slacked off for a while. But then I had kids, and that was just a great thing to do with my kids. They fell in love with drawing and art again, and both of them have some talent for it. And so some nights before bed, instead of watching something, we'll just sit on the floor for a half an hour, and we'll each take a piece of paper. The challenge I gave them not too long ago was, all right, we're each gonna name something. We have 30 seconds to draw it, or a minute, and then we each show each other, and then someone votes and we pick the one that we like the most. It's just a way to incorporate art into a game. But their love of it and talent for it sort of re-spurred me to try and start drawing again. And disappointingly, I'm like, wow, when you stop doing it for a while, your talent fades. You got to use it or you lose it. But no, it's just another way to express. I've made a few paintings that were so much harder than they make it look, on these Instagram videos where they're like, oh, they just slap some stuff up and it's brilliant. But I just find that all of that creative expression in general is just so much fun. I make little movies with my kids. My son loves James Bond, so we made a James Bond movie, a short that my daughter was in as well, and called Too Young to Try or something like that. But we score it. I use the James Bond music, and so there's just we try to just be a creative household, and then they're also in sports, and we balance it out with that. But I guess the good thing about having kids is you're forced to sort of re-examine all of those relationships you have with creativity and with sports too, as I'm now trying to toss the ball with my son. And so anyway, that's sort of a long-winded answer, but yeah, I hope that covers it.
No, it was perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, Eric, one more thing before we let you go. Is
Yeah.
there anything you can tell us about the upcoming Apple TV Plus series Lucky?
Oh, I don't know what I can tell you about that. I would hedge on less because I don't want Apple to get mad at me. But it's an amazing cast. It's Anya Taylor-Joy, who is like sensational. Timothy Oliphant, Annette Bening. Oh my gosh, Clifton Collins Jr. It's like packed cast, and yeah, it's I think somewhat based on a novel called Lucky. But I don't think I should spoil too much at this point. I can just say I think it's going to be damn good because of who they have involved.
And because of you in it, Eric.
And I hide the lead, but yes, I am also in it, and yeah, Yeah, it's fun. It was a really fun gig.
Love that. Love that. And then the one last thing, just for mischievous sake and fun sake here,
Yeah.
you being a cinematic aficionado, your work spanning over 114 things, are there any certain moments in film or scenes from movies that have always stuck with you that have helped shape your creative life?
Yeah, I remember I was just talking to my wife about this because well, this is stage, but I'll bring it full circle. We I went to see Les Mis when I was in college. It's coming into town, and I feel like I should take my daughter. And I walked out of that and I said, that is what I want to do with my life. Like, I was already doing it, but this sort of affirmed it on such a foundational level. I'll never forget that. And and then to today, we just went to see One Battle After Another the other night. And I I'm on the edge of my seat. It's kind of an exhausting movie to watch because it's so tense, almost start to finish. And I got home at 10 and it was midnight and I'm still in my living room pacing around to a degree because I'm just so hopped up. And my point to my wife was like, when someone is at that level, that Paul Thomas Anderson, his mastery of lenses and framing and pacing and story, you I was a little nervous going in because you're willingly giving over your ability to truly control your experience anymore because they are able to dig inside you and play with you. And other movies you go see and you're like, oh, I'm gonna be able to manage my experience of this. But it really reminded me the power of being in a theater at all. I like I said, I used to call that my church, and it's harder to get back now with kids on a regular basis. But that is one that I will look back on and go, wow, that was like to me a piece of art. And I don't necessarily collect them as memories, but yeah, it's just having that experience, and it's just a reminder and a renewal of the power of what I get to be a part of, which is telling a story with all these other collaborators. Theater is such an ensemble experience. The stage managers, the playwright, the actors, we all know we're making something together. And film is very much the same way, even though the departments can be very separate during the production of something. And then at the end of the day, there's an audience on both sides that gets to go on this ride. And just how I just got chills like thinking about how lucky I am to be a part of that experience for anyone else. So yeah, I don't have a singular one, but whenever I'm reminded of it, I sort of just sock it away up there and remember the feeling, and the gratitude of being able to be a part of the mechanism and the machine and the phenomenon that is cinema or television.
Incredibly put. I love it. My goodness, it's so great to have you here, Eric Lang, on our show. Thank you for
Oh,
coming aboard. Uh,
thank thank you guys for having me. Honestly, I'm just so happy to talk with you, and the questions are just so beautifully worded, man. It's really yeah, both of you I just dearly appreciate.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. We're so grateful to have you be part of our show. And it's been so much fun and inspirational speaking with you.
Oh, it's an honor. Thank you, Hillary.
Yes, and Eric, it's up to you now. Where can all of our listeners find you out in the world?
Well, let's see. Invasion is the thing that it was just airing that I did 4 or 5 episodes. That is on now, and then Lucky will be out, I guess, sometime in the near future. And then El Gato is this Amazon series I did last year. I think that's still off a bit in the distance, but yeah, I think that covers it. Hopefully, I will have more for you next time.
I'm sure you will. Thank you so much again.
Thank you
Thank
guys so
you,
much.
Eric.